Welcome to Flow Speak Studio, where English flows naturally. Let's start speaking with confidence.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Flow Speak Studio. My name's Emma, and I'm here with Alex, as always. And today we're starting a new part of our journey together, talking about daily life, starting with something very simple but very real, our mornings.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex, and honestly, I love this topic because mornings are one of those things that everyone has, but no one experiences in the same way. Some mornings are calm, some are rushed, some feel organized, and others feel completely chaotic.
Exactly. And when people learn English, they often learn ideal sentences like, I wake up at 6 a.m., I exercise, I eat a healthy breakfast. But real life doesn't always look like that.
Yeah, most mornings don't look like that at all. Sometimes you wake up late. Sometimes you check your phone before you even realize you're awake. Sometimes you don't feel motivated and you just move through the morning on autopilot.
And that's why this topic matters, because when you talk about your morning in English, you don't need perfect habits, you need real words for real moments.
And also, mornings shape how we feel for the rest of the day. If you feel rushed, stressed, or disconnected in the morning, that energy often follows you.
Yes, and for English learners, mornings can be very quiet moments, moments where your thoughts appear in your head, sometimes in your native language, sometimes in English.
I remember when I started using English more naturally, my mornings changed a bit. Not because I studied, but because I started thinking in English during small moments, while making coffee, checking messages, or getting ready.
That's such an important point. English doesn't always appear in a classroom. Sometimes it appears when you're half awake, holding a cup of coffee, thinking about the day ahead.
So, today, we're not here to tell you how your morning should be. We're here to talk about how mornings really are and how to talk about them naturally in English.
If your mornings feel messy, rushed, quiet, slow, or repetitive, that's okay. This episode is about finding English inside your real life, not changing your life for English.
Take a breath, listen calmly, and let's talk about mornings the way they really happen.
You know, when we say morning routine, a lot of people immediately imagine something very clean and organized, like waking up early, making the bed perfectly, drinking water, stretching, maybe journaling. But honestly, when I think about my real mornings, most of them don't look like that at all. For me, mornings usually start a little slowly. I wake up, but my mind is not fully awake yet. Sometimes I stay in bed for a few minutes, just listening to sounds around me, thinking about what kind of day it might be. And during that time, I'm not thinking in perfect sentences, not in any language. It's more like feelings, small thoughts, half ideas. What I've noticed is that those first minutes really set the tone for how calm or rushed I feel later. And when I try to talk about my morning in English, I don't want to describe an ideal version. I want to describe that version, the real one.
Yeah, I relate to that a lot. My mornings are very realistic too, not Instagram mornings at all. Most days, my alarm goes off, and my first thought is not motivation. It's something like, okay, here we go. I usually check the time, sometimes check my phone, even though I tell myself I won't. And while I'm doing that, my brain slowly starts waking up. I might think about work, about things I didn't finish yesterday, or about something small like what I'll eat for breakfast. What's interesting is that when English became part of my daily life, it didn't suddenly appear as full conversations in the morning. It appeared in very simple thoughts. Words like busy, tired, calm, rushed. That's how English started showing up naturally for me in the morning.
I really like that you said simple thoughts because I think many learners believe they need to practice English actively in the morning. But most of the time, it's more passive than that. For example, when I'm making coffee, I might think, I need something warm, or I'm still sleepy. Those are not complicated sentences, but they're real. And that's exactly the kind of English people actually use when they talk about their morning. Also, mornings often come with emotions. Some days I feel calm and ready. Other days I feel slightly anxious, even if I don't know why. And learning how to express that in English is much more useful than memorizing a perfect routine.
Exactly. And mornings are also very personal. Some people wake up early and enjoy silence. Others need noise, music, or a podcast to feel human again. For me, silence in the morning helps me organize my thoughts. If I rush too fast, I feel like I'm chasing the day instead of starting it. And when I describe that in English, I don't need advanced vocabulary. I just need honest language. I've noticed that when learners talk about their mornings honestly, their English sounds more natural. There's less pressure because they're not trying to impress anyone, they're just describing life.
Yes, and that's such an important point. When you remove pressure, your language flows better. I remember talking to a friend in English once, and they asked me, "How are your mornings usually?" At first, I wanted to give a good answer, but then I stopped and said, "Honestly, they're quiet, a little slow, and sometimes messy." And that moment felt real. The conversation felt relaxed, and that's what we want learners to experience, using English as a tool to express reality, not perfection.
Exactly, and mornings are also full of small routines that repeat every day. Making the bed or not making it, preparing breakfast or skipping it, getting dressed while thinking about the day ahead. When you talk about these things in English, you're practicing vocabulary that's incredibly useful because these are conversations people actually have at work, with friends, while traveling, or even with strangers.
Exactly. And that's why mornings are such a good place to start when learning to speak more naturally. They're familiar, they're repetitive, and they don't require big explanations, just honesty.
Something I've noticed over time is that my morning routine doesn't just affect my mood, it affects the way I speak English during the day. When my morning feels rushed, my English feels rushed too. I speak faster, I make more small mistakes, and I'm more aware of myself. But when my morning is calm, even just a little, my thoughts feel clearer. And that clarity shows up in my English. I don't search for words as much, and I'm less afraid of pauses. For example, on mornings when I wake up late, skip breakfast, and jump straight into work, my English feels reactive. I answer instead of expressing. I survive conversations instead of enjoying them.
I relate to that deeply. For me, mornings create a mental rhythm. When I rush, my brain stays in problem solving mode, not communication mode. I remember a period when my mornings were very chaotic. I would wake up, check messages immediately, respond to emails, and mentally start my day before I even got out of bed. And later, when I spoke English, I felt tense. My sentences were correct, but they didn't feel alive. When I slowly changed my mornings, even small changes, my English changed too. Not because I studied more, but because my mind had space to breathe.
That space is so important. I think many learners believe fluency comes from effort alone, but sometimes fluency comes from how you enter the day. One simple thing that helped me was choosing one moment in the morning where I stayed present. For me, that moment is coffee. While I drink it, I don't translate in my head. I don't plan sentences, I just notice things and let English appear naturally if it does. Some mornings I think, this is strong, or I needed this. And those tiny phrases become part of my natural English.
Yes, and those phrases are real. They're not textbook English, they're lived English. I do something similar when I get ready. While choosing clothes or brushing my hair, I sometimes think in English without forcing it. Words like comfortable, too cold, simple, or I'll keep it casual. These moments matter because they teach your brain that English is not only for studying or performing, it's for existing.
Exactly. And mornings also teach us about consistency. You don't need a perfect routine, you need a repeatable one. Some days, my morning routine takes 10 minutes. Other days, it takes an hour. But what stays consistent is my awareness. I notice how I feel, and I allow English to be part of that awareness. Over time, that creates confidence. Not loud confidence, quiet confidence.
And that quiet confidence shows up later in conversations, at work, in meetings, in casual talks, because your brain is already used to expressing simple realities in English.
That's why mornings are such a powerful foundation. They don't demand perfection, they invite presence. One thing I find really interesting is how the way we start our morning quietly follows us into the rest of the day. Not in an obvious way, but in subtle moments, like how we respond to people, how patient we are, and how comfortable we feel speaking English when things aren't perfectly prepared. For example, when my morning feels grounded, I notice that at work I'm more present in conversations. I don't rush to answer. I allow myself to think, to pause, and to speak naturally. My English doesn't feel like something I'm using. It feels like something I'm living in.
Yes, and I think that shows up a lot in professional situations, in meetings especially. On days when my morning is chaotic, I enter meetings already tense. So when I speak English, I focus too much on getting things right. I simplify my ideas. I avoid saying what I really think because I don't want to make mistakes. But when my morning starts calmly, even if nothing else goes perfectly, I notice that I explain myself better. I take ownership of my ideas. My English sounds more confident, not because it's perfect, but because it's connected to how I feel.
And this doesn't apply only to work. It shows up in social life too. Think about meeting friends, talking to someone new, or even sending a voice message. When your morning was rushed, your mind stays in task mode, so conversations feel like tasks as well. But when your morning allowed you to be human, to wake up slowly, to notice your thoughts, conversations feel lighter. You don't overthink every word. You let yourself be spontaneous.
Travel is another great example. When you're traveling, mornings are often unpredictable, but the mindset you bring into the morning changes everything. I remember traveling and having to speak English early in the day, at a hotel, an airport, or a cafe. On mornings when I woke up stressed, my English felt rigid. I stuck to safe phrases. But on mornings when I accepted the situation and stayed present, my English flowed better. I reacted naturally. I joked. I asked follow-up questions. I connected.
That's such an important point. Acceptance. Morning routines are not about control. They're about orientation. You're orienting your mind for the day. You're telling yourself, I don't need to rush my thoughts. I can arrive slowly. When you do that, English stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like communication. And that's when growth really happens.
I also think mornings teach us something about self-trust. When you practice expressing small thoughts in English early in the day, you build momentum. Later, when a conversation appears unexpectedly, a call, a question, a comment, you're already warmed up. Your brain has already been there. You don't freeze as much. You don't panic. You trust that words will come, even if they're not perfect.
And that trust changes how you see yourself as a speaker. You stop labeling yourself as good or bad at English. You simply see yourself as someone who communicates. That's why mornings matter so much, not because they need to be ideal, but because they're yours. They're the first space where English can exist without pressure. Before we finish today, we want to slow things down a little and focus on language that appears naturally in the morning. Not textbook phrases, but expressions people really use when they talk about their day, their routine, and how they feel when the day begins. These phrases matter because mornings are when most real-life conversations start. At home, at work, in messages, or even with yourself. If you feel comfortable with this type of English, your whole day feels easier.
Exactly. And what's important here is not memorizing these phrases, but recognizing them, hearing how they sound in context, feeling how natural they are. So let's take them one by one, slowly, and really live inside each phrase for a moment.
The first phrase is, I'm still waking up. This is something people say when their body is awake, but their mind isn't fully there yet. It's very human. It's soft. And it's often used to lower expectations. For example, if someone asks you a question early in the morning and you don't answer quickly, you might smile and say, sorry, I'm still waking up. It tells the other person, give me a second, I'll get there.
This next one is important because it reflects real mornings, not perfect ones. The phrase is, I need a few minutes to get going. This doesn't mean you're lazy. It means you're honest about your rhythm. I often use it when I don't want to rush the start of my day. Like when someone starts talking seriously right away, and I feel my brain needs time to warm up. It sounds calm, polite, and natural, not defensive.
Another phrase you'll hear a lot is, "My mornings are pretty simple." This is a great phrase because it removes pressure. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're just describing your reality. You might say this when someone asks about your routine and you don't want to list 10 habits. It creates space for an easy conversation instead of comparison.
The next phrase is, I try not to rush the start of my day. I really like this one because it shows intention, not perfection. You're not saying you never rush. You're saying you're aware. I've used this phrase at work, especially explaining why I don't check emails immediately. It sounds thoughtful and mature, not careless.
This next one is very emotional for many people. The phrase is, "I need some quiet time in the morning." It's not about being antisocial. It's about knowing yourself. I often say this to explain why I don't talk much early in the day, and people usually understand because it sounds honest and grounded.
The next phrase is, once I get moving, I feel better. This is a very common structure in English. It shows a transition from slow to active. I use it when mornings feel heavy at first, but improve naturally. It's reassuring, especially talking about energy or motivation.
This next one is gentle and very realistic. My energy comes back slowly. There's no judgment in this phrase, no pressure. It's something you might say when you don't want to pretend you're fully awake or excited. It helps normalize slower mornings.
This next phrase connects directly to mindset. I don't like starting the day stressed. It's simple but powerful. You're stating a boundary. I've used this phrase to explain my routine choices, like not checking messages early. It communicates self-respect without sounding dramatic.
The next phrase is, "I ease into my mornings." This phrase sounds very natural and calm. It suggests softness, not control. When you use this phrase, people immediately understand that your mornings are intentional, even if they're not structured.
And the last phrase is a reflective one. How I start my day affects everything. This isn't something you say casually. It's something you say when you're sharing insight, when you've noticed patterns in your life. I've said this in deep conversations, especially when talking about growth or habits. It sounds thoughtful, not motivational in a fake way.
All of these phrases have something in common. They're slow. They're human. They give you space. And that's exactly what morning English should feel like.
Yes, if your mornings feel natural, your English will too. You don't need to force confidence. You let it arrive with you.
As we start to slow down and bring this conversation to a close, I want to take a moment to breathe with you. Mornings are not just a part of the day. They're a feeling. They set the emotional temperature for everything that comes after. If there's one thing I hope you take from this episode, it's that your morning doesn't need to be impressive. It doesn't need to be productive. It just needs to feel like yours.
Yeah, and I think that's something many of us forget. We wake up already comparing ourselves to other people, to routines we see online, or to some version of ourselves we think we should be. But real mornings are messy. They're quiet, they're slow, and sometimes they're just about surviving the first cup of coffee and letting your thoughts arrive one by one. And honestly, that's enough.
And the same goes for your English. You don't need to sound perfect first thing in the morning. You don't need big words or fast sentences. Your English, like your morning, can wake up slowly. It can stretch. It can pause. It can repeat itself. That doesn't mean you're bad at English. It means you're human.
Exactly. Progress doesn't come from pushing harder in the morning. It comes from consistency, from comfort, from showing up again and again in small ways. When you allow yourself to speak English naturally without pressure, you start trusting your voice, and that trust grows quietly, the same way mornings do.
So tomorrow morning, or whenever your day begins, try this. Notice how you speak to yourself. Notice the words you use. Notice the rhythm of your thoughts. That awareness alone is already practice, and it counts more than you think.
Your English doesn't need to be loud to be strong. It doesn't need to be fast to be fluent. It just needs to be real. And if today's conversation felt familiar, if it felt calm, or if it felt like something you've lived before, then you're exactly where you need to be.
Thank you for spending this time with us, for listening, for reflecting, for choosing to learn in a gentle way. We'll be right here in the next episode, continuing these real conversations about life, habits, and English, one day at a time.
Take care of your mornings, take care of your voice, and remember, your English is already part of your daily life.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment down below.